That's very funny.
Meal stuff.
Do you talk to Casey in a minute?
I have not since last week.
Do you know why he's not gonna be here? or-
Yeah, he's sick.
Having his foot under
He
the
says
wall.
his pain medicine for his knee is reacting with meloxicam and it's making him throw up a lot.
Have we seen
That doesn't sound
like
good.
No.
his foot is actually-
He says he's trying to wean off.
Did he break two places in his?
He's no. I don't know.
I haven't seen it.
Whatever it is, they can't.
I don't see him.
I guess do anything about it. But last I heard, like they can't like put it in a cast because of the spot that it's in.
From the way he showed me, it's kind of like right there underneath his knee.
No.
Is that new?
Just takes time.
They
What the
told me
verdict
like it's
is.
supposed to be non-bearing, weight bearing for like 6 weeks.
Oh, uh-huh.
He was down here when I saw him.
Uh-huh.
It is 4:00. Please call the roll.
Sure. Jennifer Trask, here. Gwen Martin, here. Kay Headley,
Here.
Cindy Bell,
Here.
Otis Edwards. Here. We have full quorum.
All right. Do I have approval of the last minutes or last meeting's minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I second that motion.
Ms. Travis? We're just calling for the vote.
Yes.
I'm calling for the vote to approve. You made the
Yes.
motion, right? Yes. Okay, yes. I'm sorry, you asked it like it was a question. Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Ms. Headley?
Yes.
Ms. Bell?
Yes.
And Mr. Edwards? Unanimous.
First up on the agenda is committee reports. Freedom Fest Committee. Our Parks Director is not here, so.
Yeah, I have texted him and I thought maybe he could join us by phone.
Okay.
If possible, but he hasn't answered that and he said that he is ill today and having kind of a medicine reaction, so he couldn't be here.
Okay. All right. Trails Committee. I spoke with Casey last week and we chose not to have a meeting because there's nothing really new to bring up on the trails. He did inform me that the switchback, not the switchback, the park from the Oaks to the back of Bell Park, we're going to have to put that on hold for right now because of the incline was too steep to meet the requirements for ADA.
Ooh, was that
So,
checked before?
so we're having to go back on the plan. So we will meet back probably in sometime in the new year on the Trails Committee. Do we have anything on the Tree and Plant Board?
Not really, except that from what I observed, our tree giveaway went very well, I think. I mean, I haven't really talked to Rod about specifics, but I understand they gave away all the trees, so, and probably pretty quickly from what I observed. So that went well.
Do we have any new items to be added to the agenda? Okay. The first order of business is an oath of office for our new commissioner, Gwen Martin.
Yes, ma'am. Would you like to join me down here?
Sure.
In front
Be
of
my pleasure.
this world? And we will complete this. Anyway, Welcome to the commission, Gwen. If you will raise your right hand and repeat after me, please. I, Gwen Martin, do solemnly swear that I support the Constitution of the United States
That I support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Arkansas,
and the Constitution of the State of Arkansas,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and that I will faithfully discharge
the duties of the office of
the duties of the office of
Parks Commissioner
Parks Commissioner
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon which I'm about to enter.
All right, you're sworn in. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is from the director. It's a discussion on the streetscape design. Since he is not here, I'm assuming we'll be tabling that at this time.
We formally need a vote and a motion
Okay.
to table things.
Do I have a motion to table the discussion on the streetscape design?
I'll make that motion.
Were you looking for a second?
Yes, ma'am. All right, Mrs. Travis,
Yes.
Ms. Ms. Martin,
Yes.
Ms. Headley,
Yes.
Ms. Bell,
Yes.
Mr. Edwards. Unanimous.
Okay. The next thing on the agenda is the financial director's 2025 budget review.
Okay, first I'm going to show you a little bit about your finances, and then we'll get into the budget that you have a copy of. And I did give you a revised parks operations. It's separate from the packet that you received. However, it didn't impact greatly. I just have some finance department changes that were made since that budget was done on Friday. And it mostly reflects the change in the health insurance for the city. So what I wanted to do is first, I want to start with your restricted funds and how much money is basically in the bank as of 10/31 for each of the accounts that you guys control. What you don't control is the surplus or deficit that you're incurring in the operating fund, because that's part of the general fund. So the Parks AP grant fund, you will notice that, wrong way. You will notice that it's 8,000. I want to move this over here. It's $8,562 in the hole as of 10/31. That's an overspend. Mostly it's coming from the disc golf payment that was made in 2024. That was really a 2023 expense, and that was not a carryover item. So it ended up causing that. If you'll notice, he was budgeting pretty much break even at $24.36. And that's even the revised budget. So he was looking to be liquid, but I don't think he was anticipating it being quite 8,500. I'll get into a little bit more on that in a second. As far as your inclusive park is concerned, this 7,368, that's in the bank. That's coming from the A&P Commission. And what's happening is that inclusive park ledger is where your $275,000 is sitting. It'll be parked there once you remove it from your city sales and use tax to pay that. That amount of 7,368, A&P has granted to the inclusive park project that money to be used for specific items of park equipment that will be put into the park once it's ready, and it's being housed under that ledger until such time as the disbursement is made. So you have that money, but it's restricted, is what I'm trying to say. You can't use it to cover anything else. You can't move that money to cover the amount up in the $8,562 loss area up here. So this number can't go anywhere else. As far as the splash pad checking is concerned, we have been making payments out of that for the splash pad. You're at $376,000. That's well short of what you're going to be spending. And that's because the city sales and use tax, this $792,000 down here in the city sales and use tax line, that amount is inclusive of $605,000 that you're going to be transferring over that you agreed upon to do in order to cover the remaining cost of the splash pads construction. And then that pretty much shows where you stand right now as far as the only one that as of today that is of concern is the Parks A&P grant fund. It does limit your ability for your budget that we're going to be looking at, because that's going to be a carryover loss that or deficit that you're going to be having to consider when you look at the budgets for 2025. And the reason that this isn't really of a major concern as far as, oh my gosh, we don't have any money in the bank, is that this money that's sitting there, this 8,562, these are virtual accounts. The only one that is of a concern would be the city sales and use tax all parks, because that account is where the sales tax drops into, and it's also where your major capital items come from. As far as the Parks A&P, most of that is public relations, where you do your Freedom Fest, you do your Fall Festival, and you do your Christmas in the Park, or Christmas on the Square, or whatever. That's where those monies come from. Oops, wrong way. So this is the A&P grant fund, and I wanted to point out, this is how it stands right now. So when I was talking about the Fall Festival, and I want to make sure that stays, the Fall Festival, you budgeted $7,500 for the Fall Festival. So far, you've incurred $7,058, and you have a remaining balance that you could spend of $441.60. Keep in mind, you're at a deficit right now in the overall account. This Christmas in the Park, $6,554, $445 that's remaining. The reason that that's already accounted for, even though you haven't had the Christmas in the Park, is because the Christmas in the Park payments for the expenditures occur in January. So the one that you're doing this year will be next year's expense. That was 2023's expense that was incurred in 2024. That's how that runs. We are a modified cash basis of accounting, so we book it when we actually pay it. Freedom Fest, you budgeted $73,000. You spent $71,000, or $1,000 left, it looks like, that you could spend. And then the movies in the park, there were $2,300 worth of expenditures on a $2,500 budget. So the budget was $90,000 in the public relations category. You spent $87,000 and you're $2,100 under. But you can't just look at one category. You have to look at what impacts that A&P overall. And the one that you look at is this unbudgeted CIP expense. That's that disc golf. There was no budget for it for this year, and there was $7,457 come in. As far as the capital expense, you bought the inflatable screen for the movies in the park, and you had $8,000 for the second bridge at Liberty Park. So your overall right now is under budget, or an amount of $8,600. However, that expense for the Liberty Park Bridge is going to be right at $8,000, and it is coming, so that we have to pay it. The bridge has been installed, and it's out at Liberty Park right now. As far as the estimated additional revenue, next month, I've estimated that you will have about $8,100 come in. So on the deficit, that would cover the deficit if you didn't have this $8,000 that's coming in. So your deficit projected is going to be somewhere around $7,200. Realize that that's real close to the 74 that was unanticipated that came in this year. So you would have been close to you would have been deficit, but you would have been close in the way that was managed. One of the things that we talked about was this $71,000 for the Freedom Fest. There was $750 more spent for fireworks that was unbudgeted, even though you have an overall budget. If you had looked at everything that was incurred here as far as capital is concerned, you would probably not have made that decision to spend that. So I've cautioned your director to be careful and recognize what your total overall categories are, because bottom line is what you have to be worried about, not an individual category, not an individual line item. So that's going to parlay into how this is going to impact next year's budget. The city sales and use tax through October now this is good news, was actually up 12.97% month over same year. And overall, we're at 4.83% growth. We budgeted 4.5. So that's good. It's right on track for where we budgeted our revenues from. What I'm really concerned about is your operating though. And that's what's going to cause a problem in your budgets that's in front of you right now once it goes to the city council. The operating county sales taxes, which is used for operations of the Parks Department, the overall was down 8.13% same month over year month of October. And for the year, we're down 1.2%. It's not growth, it's actually declining. If you'll notice, the 2,000,002 was 23's amount. And we're right now for the same January through October period, we're at 2,000,001. I'm budgeting that to be flat for 25, which means whatever we end up with this year, that's what I'm budgeting for next year. So if we have growth in that area, that growth will just add to your coffers and be a good thing. I'm not looking to make any kind of a growth projection in this account. So now you know why. So the first thing I want to do is go all the way to the back. Actually, I'll do it this way. If you go to the last page of your budget, which is your inclusive park, I think that's the budget that we're going to look at. I'm going to do these one at a time from least concerning to the most concerning. So that's why we're starting an inclusive park budget. It should be the last page of your budget packet that you got originally, or that was on your desk when you first came in.
Like
It's the one with the cover page. on it.
financial report or the back of the budget.
The budget's is behind the finance report. And it,
Well, and the two dates at the bottom of the budget, we just do different pages. That's how they can tell the difference.
yeah, it has a cover page to it. It says City of Greenwood Parks Department. It looks like this. It has a City of Greenwood Parks Department 2025 preliminary budget. Should be on behind your financial report packet that you got.
I think it might be two separate.
Well, no, I gave you a separate one for the operating because I made modifications to it. She didn't make the whole thing. Well, why isn't that? Everything after that should be in your packet. Charla made the copy, sorry. Well, it's up on the screen.
Save some treats.
So,
Yeah.
so, all right. So on the screen, this is where we're budgeting. I'll do it correctly. The 275,000 transfer from city sales and use tax parks, that's committed. And that is your total amount of commitment for the inclusive park. This 7,368 is monies coming from the A&P. And that's what we already have in the coffers right now. So next year, we're looking at 2775. This 7,000 may be carried over if we don't spend it by the end of the year. It'll actually become part of your new budget. And so if we go down, you'll see that we had the 275,000 will most likely be expended next year. And if that's the case, because I think they're doing it in phases, this 7,368 will be a draw on that, and it'll wipe it out to zero once that money's transferred to the funding for the equipment for the actual park. Okay. Let's go to the splash pad. You don't have it in front of you, but it'll be up here on the screen. You didn't copy the whole budget.
I did.
No, they only have the index page.
Well, we think we.
No, I got it's
Yeah.
front and back.
Yeah. we
Well,
think
it's
we
front
may
and
have found
back.
it.
Yeah,
Well, it's
it's
separate. So,
Yeah, it's a whole.
It's a whole separate
Yeah,
pack.
yeah.
Okay, so you do have it.
yeah, I gave them what you gave me.
Yeah, okay. She came up and showed me just the front pages. I thought, well, you're supposed to have the whole budget.
Yeah, this should probably be.
So what the separate one he gave us-
They're just stapled incorrect.
Okay, so I'm going backwards.
We're on page 10 now.
You're on page 10. Thank you for giving me the number. Yeah. Bottom, lower right. This is the splash pad. So if you'll notice, we have a $125,460 expenditure. So, revenues from the grant already received on that. And then down below, you'll see the A&P transfer of the $20,000, which was budgeted, and it's sitting over in the splash pad account, ready to be dispersed for the capital, the paid in capital. We won't make that payment until next year, 2025, along with an additional 20,000 that's coming from the A&P Commission. So we will do additional paid in capital down on our loan to pay the interest off for amount of $40,000 next year. This 20 and the 20 that's already budgeted, you'll see down on the bottom under expenses that we're going to leave 40,000 in that account. That will be the one that's used for the additional paid in capital. Our capital improvement projects is the splash pad. It's 929,000. So what we need is to come back up to the top when you'll see the city sales and use tax line item 605,264. That is the amount that's coming out of that 790 something thousand that you have in your city sales and use tax. You've committed to that over to it to fund the remainder of the project outside of the loan, which you're currently using. So down at the bottom, you're going to see that there's your 700. We started this year with a loan of 750,000. The budgeted revenues over expenses so far this year is 457. So you're at 292. Next year, we're budgeting 252,000. So that would take care of funding the entire splash pad at this point with a $40,000 remainder. And that 40,000 is the additional paid in capital going towards your interest. So the splash pad's in good shape. So we go over to A&P grant. And this is what I was talking about as far as you're going to start the year in the hole. And this is what the director had budgeted. 7,000 for the Fall Fest, 7,000 for the Christmas in the Park, and 74,200 for the Freedom Fest. That's up from the 2024 amount. Now, I know you guys have headliners and you want to, bring in this big bands with these big costs associated with it. But if you stop and think about it, I'm just going to give this as food for thought. You bring that in just about the time, just before they finish, right when the fireworks start. They're the last item that people will come down to the square to see. So if you're interested in seeing that, but you're not interested in going when the vendors are there, all that big traffic comes in when there's no revenue producing from that, just an expense. If you were to focus on local bands and you have a good interest in that, then people would be, you would be lowering your cost and your headliner wouldn't be detracting from your sales down in the actual square when the vendors are there. Just something to consider. I mean, let's look at what's your return on that investment for it. It's nice to say, look, we have this great band coming, but all they're doing is sitting down. Maybe even they brought their own food. They'll sit down and they'll watch the band and then they watch the fireworks and then they go home. So is the draw enough? I mean, you have to think about that. And you may decide it is, and you may be sold that it is, but I'm not so sure. If we're looking at where our spend is, I don't have yet the A&P's budget for what they're anticipating their growth to be. But if it's still the 5%, I think I budgeted about 4.5 to just drop it a little bit. Then you have your capital improvement from the Arkansas grant for, I think that's the 20% or the 25. I think it's an 80-20 grant. That's the 25% from what you're going to be using for your paving of your trail for Bell Park. Now, you just heard that might be postponed a little bit. I think you're not even going to look at it because of that steep incline and the ADA requirements for it. That's coming. That requirement's coming from the grant because that trail is already there. So it's just, if you're going to use a grant, it has to be up to a certain standard. And then there's the transfer to the splash pad for debt service coming from the A&P. So when you go to the actual budget itself, we're looking at 105,000 coming in as revenue, which is your 45%. This amount right here, 105,052.90 plus the 20,000 that they have committed. So it's 125,000 in revenue. You're looking at your public relations budget being 88,200. You're looking at the splash pad transfer of that 20 that's coming in. That's a wash. So that flows through. And then your capital improvement project of 31,000 means that you're going to be in a deficit spend this year of 14,000. You're already budgeting being in the hole before we look at what your carryover is, which is in the hole. So right now your carryover is a negative 7,300 and you're going to add 14,000 negative to it and you're going to be in the hole 21,000. That's not going to fly. That's not a balanced budget. You're going to have to do something to curb expenses, which is why I gave you a little hint at some of the things you might want to reconsider for next year's Freedom Fest, because that's your largest expense. I know I'm probably going to be run out of town on a rail, but I have to look at the dollars and where those dollars are coming from. All right. And you realize that the Freedom Fest cost for the fireworks comes out of the general fund, not out of your budget here. And that's usually $15,000 to $20,000. And if you even thought about how much Freedom Fest cost you, you actually spent 71,000, and then you add the 20,000, that's 91,000, and then you add the salaries for the overtime and the cost related to the holiday for the departments that work it. That Freedom Fest cost, that free Freedom Fest cost about $125,000 to put on. All right, city sales and use tax parks. This is the budget that was submitted to me by Casey. One of the things I want you to notice is this top line, contract labor, pavilion cleaning. That normally, because it's a pavilion and it's one of the major assets of the Parks Department, and it is a revenue producer, this pavilion cleaning was moved to city sales, from city sales and use tax back to the park operations budget. So you got to remember that the revenue's there as well, because you charge a cleaning fee to the people who rent that pavilion. So it made sense to move that item. You'll look also down here at the principal and interest for the splash pad. The principal amount next year that we'll be paying in 2025 is $137,000 for your debt service on the principal for the loan. Your interest on the splash pad next year is $35,000. And that's a large expense that's coming out of your amount that you receive for your revenue. One of the things that was moved is your service contract for parks mowing. That was a significant dollar amount, and that's your Bell Park and your 19 acres, and that was purchased adjacent to Bell Park by the city, and then also your town square. And so when we go back to the operating department, you're going to see that this amount moved. Now, you had to do that because you are committing this $275,000 for the inclusive park we talked about, and the $605,000 to the splash pad project. So your total amount that you have sitting as a expense is $1,138,000. So I'm going to go to the summary page. There's your $1,138,000 right here. And then you see it's going to leave you a deficit of $604,000, but you have $770,000 right now in the bank. You take off the amount that we're looking at being a deficit of $604,000, that leaves you at $166,000 if the budget goes through as projected. That is below your $250,000 that we put as our threshold for reserve. So if you're willing to do that, and you're willing to say we're going to start 2026 at roughly about $150,000 in our bank account, and then rely on at least 2/3 of this $500,000 because you saw that 137 and 35, about 170,000 goes right to debt service from this amount, from the 533. I'd caution you on that. You never know what'll come up that has to be spent. That's an emergency. You have no contingency, basically, if you look at it being less than $250,000. So there's some hard decisions that are going to have to be made for sure. Then it's an aggressive budget, is what I'm probably saying. So let's go to the Parks Department now, just the operating account. One of your biggest revenue sources for the Parks Department is the county sales tax. And we had a budget of 263,000. That's the handout that I gave you separate. Okay. The handout that I put in front of you is what we're looking at now. By the way, Charlotte, I'll get you that. I ran out when I gave one to.
Jump liver over here.
No, I actually have it over here.
Okay.
I'm using it.
I'll just listen and watch.
Okay. So this county sales tax, we're looking to projected it's 251,000, but it is below this year's amended budget that we have. So you're lowering your amount that is available in your revenue stream. Pavilion rental fees, he's looking at 50,000. That is up, but the rates also increased for next year, and we are starting to collect on those. You're pretty close right now to your amended budget, 40,000. You're at 39, and I think today I even put another couple hundred in there for payments on the rentals to that. You may hit that 40,000 this year on the revenue side. The grant is a wash, so you don't have to worry about it. The revenue's booked there, but the expenses also. So this won't be of a concern, this 126,160. Whether you do it, expend it or not, it's budgeted. As far as the expenses are concerned, I'm going to go to it right here, this revenue capital expense. You have a capital expenditure in here that I think he mentioned to you, this Daihatsu Hijet to 2023. It's about $30,000. You might want to consider that and watch that number. And you got to look for needs and wants. Yeah, I know you'd want it. It probably would be helpful, but can you make do with what you currently have and still accomplish your duties and obligations under this department? That's how I would look at it. You do have the pickle court parking lot. Is that a need or a want right now? And the reason I'm bringing this up is because when you look at the total amount that you're overspent in this department, you have no checking account for this. This comes out of the general fund. So you're going to have to go back to the general fund and say, I need whatever my deficit is. And we try to do a balanced budget, which means you live within your revenue stream. And to some extent, given some circumstances, the general fund is willing to cover it as long as they have the funds in there from all of the needs from all of the general fund departments. Because you're not alone in this. All the other departments are buying for the same dollar. That's how that works. So we go back to this department for expenditures. And I will talk about the salaries and I will talk about the health insurance. We are looking to switch, and it's going to save as I mentioned, the city of Greenwood about $130,000 right now as it currently exists. Not the Parks Department, the whole city. As far as the expenditures is concerned, this is about normal. This year, 26,900 is where you are overspent right now as of November 15th in the parks operations. You budgeted to be right at about $6,000. You want to be liquid in this. You want to be less than 10,000 is probably a good way of looking at it. Over or under 10,000 either way from zero. I consider that to be pretty liquid in your operating. However, if you'll notice your current budget, because we moved the line item up here called support service contract mowing, it's this number right here for $50,000. That came out of the city sales and use tax and shifted back over to the operating side. Now, if you look down at the bottom, that 174,000 is a deficit, which you're going to be looking to go to the general fund for. That's, to be perfectly honest with you, I think that's going to be a hard pill for the city council to swallow. Big time. And I'm going to show you that's why I went backwards, because I want to show you all those numbers and what it does right down here in your fund balance budget for 2025. The parks operations, which will be looking to be funded by the general fund, is short 174,000. The monies underneath that are the monies that the Parks Department controls. City sales and use tax parks, what I showed you, is below the 250,000 that we set as our reserve. It's down to 166,000. The parks AM, and if we shift the 50,000 back to that, which is your budget for mowing, you're going to be less than that. You're going to be down at 116,000 and just barely above 100. Your parks AMP, you're looking at right now, according to the budget that we currently have that I shared with you, it's $21,000 deficit. The 40 and the 7,000 is restricted. You can't use those for anything other than what that purpose was for, the splash pad and the inclusive park. So as far as the funds you have to do things with, it's about $145,000. And even though you have 191 in all-in fund balance cash, the two restrictions are a little bit of a problem for you. You're way below where your 175,000 or right at 174 two of what you're going to be asking the general fund for. That's not a very good budget.
No, and I especially don't like the AMP falling into a deficit like that, because we need to be mindful that AMP, is being generous by giving the 45%. And we don't want them to think that we're just recklessly going over on their donation to us.
And that doesn't mean it actually vies bad for the fact that if you go to them and say, we need more, then they're really going to scrutinize what you're spending on, because you're overspending. And they would want you to be more prudent in your budgets. That's the way I would look at it if I were on the city council. So I'm not happy with this budget, to be personal about it. I think that it's got a lot of work that needs to be done. And with the fact that the director's not here and we need to really sit down and talk about it, I will go to one other thing, as I promised, which was the salaries. COLA is the wild card right now on the salary side. The federal COLA is 2.5. The revised max is moved by that COLA. So when you look at the previous maximum that we had, the previous max of 69.2, it goes to 79.84 based on that 2.5%. However, the COLA doesn't have to be set at that. Right now, when I presented a preliminary to the city council, as far as discussion is concerned, Arkansas's COLA is 2.3%. It's lower than the actual national COLA. And that's historically what the city council usually opts for, because that reflects what it cost of living is in this part of the country. So he's also put in projections for merit increases for himself and for one of his employees. The other two have not been here long enough for him to award that, but I don't see any consideration. That means they would be going well over a year before they would be up for any kind of an incentive merit increase. So there's not even one plan for later in the year. That would have to be come back to the council commission rather for, in order to approve any kind of an increase for these two gentlemen that are listed here. Just something that I would like to discuss when we sit down and have our session, our study session. But it does give you some food for thought. I did tell you that the workers' comp went way up. As far as AML's workers' comp went up 20 grand for the city. So I would recommend that, because you will be having a December meeting, right? If you sometime between now and the December meeting want to have a study session, I'd highly advise that.
Do y'all want to try to pin down a date? I asked Casey today what his preferred date was, maybe, and he didn't answer that. So I don't know when he can. You just want to set one. Hopefully you'll make it.
I would like for us to set one. I think we really need to sit down and just look at all the details and see what we can.
Our next meeting is the 17th. Next week is Thanksgiving. So it would have to be the week of the 2nd through the 6th or the 9th through the 13th.
Are y'all okay with Wednesday at 4?
Uh,
Wednesday
Decem-
be December 4th at 4. Is everybody okay with that?
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Wednesday, December 4th.
Works for me.
It's 2 days after, I guess, a city council. Oh, it's the day after a city council meeting, Tom.
Oh, this is the budget, so I'm ready.
Okay.
It's going to be Casey.
Yeah, you're done with your part right now.
Yeah. Mhm.
Y'all like that date?
Yeah, did you say 4 o'clock?
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock, December 4th? Okay. Well, I will put that down if everybody's good with it.
December the 4th.
And then as an agenda item on the next meeting, you want to put potentially the approval.
Okay. I will
And
do
at that study session, all your changes that you'd make, I can do them on the fly, so you can see the impact immediately.
Thank you, Tom.
Hmm.
So,
Comprehensive and eye-opening.
yep. Homework to do.
What day was it?
December the
What day?
4th. Oh, it's Wednesday, December the 4th.
December the 4th.
Yes, December the 4th.
Basically, 100,000.
If we keep.
I failed to put the approval of y'all's next calendar on it, next year's calendar on it. I gave you a copy of the calendar. It's on the very back of your packet. If you want to glance at it, I just need an approval that y'all are good with it.
Same
On the
as.
back of this. It's our approval of our calendar for next. Do I need to add that to the
Yeah, I'll make
agenda?
that motion. That'll work.
Yeah, I'll add that number to the agenda and so Otis makes a motion to approve that.
I'll second.
Ms. Travis,
Yes.
Ms. Gwen,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Mrs. Headley,
Yes.
Mrs. Bell,
Yes.
and Mr. Edwards.
Yes.
That's unanimous. We'll adopt that calendar.
Okay. The last thing on our agenda is nominees for alternate commissioners members. Do we have any?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
Advertising it.
Yeah, why don't we
Anything.
put it out
You
there?
want to?
for- Does anybody else think that we should just put it out there for people to express interest?
A
maybe?
call for alternate member of the commission. We
Yeah.
can put it on
That
Facebook if
they're-
you want.
Mhm.
Okay, we'll try that. I'll do it.
There is an application process, correct?
Don't think so, but what I
Good
can
if we could
ask them
have-
to get in touch with you via email.
Okay.
If they can email you and then,
And what do I need to do?
because we don't really have a process for it. We just
Create an
take
application
names,
would be
Yes.
good.
create application.
Yeah.
Okay, I can do that and send it to Brandon and or all of y'all and
All of us, yeah. Send it all.
Yes.
I think I filled something out. I remember filling out.
you can just each of y'all send back feedback to me, not to the rest of the commission, so you don't have this online discussion, that the public's not aware of. So just send me your recommendations and I'll get with Brandon to approve.
And when you put it out there, you might want to specify some of the criteria. I mean, like, we do have to be in the city limits.
Yes, I will
So
put the
that-
state law
Yeah.
on there,
Yeah,
the little blurb.
whatever it is.
Yeah, I don't have it memorized, but there is
That-
one.
that-
I do know there's one. Are there any specific questions that you want me to put on the questionnaire that you think of off the top of your head? about like maybe why do you, what
Why?
interests you about?
Also, notify them our agenda, in other words, 4 o'clock, that's important. We need to be
Our
consistent with that.
schedule when we meet.
And then
you know,
it
what
is.
would be expected of them.
Well, that'll sort out some, maybe not. I'm just saying there'll be somebody may be interested, but they just can't fit it in their lifestyle.
So anyone would be encouraged to attend our meetings.
Yeah.
So stay up to date, because that's the point,
Yeah.
Mhm.
anytime.
and when the meetings are.
Kind of like the job requirement,
Mm-hmm.
what's required of you.
I'll send that.
Anybody, okay, I'm not advocating this, but how about recruiting? Anybody know anybody that wants to do this? Get the word, I mean, I'm not singling people out, I'm just we're singling the whole world out, but if you happen,
I have a neighbor that's already on one of the trails committees or something. The Barrentines.
They showed up one time.
Yeah. Okay. Once.
Mhm.
I'll ask them if they're
That'd be
interested in
great.
an alternate, because
Yes.
they're a good couple
and
and a young
anybody
couple
else, have some
with kids.
people that they might be interested in. Just, they can glance at the requirements.
Bobby
Sort it out.
Parker. I want to say Bobby Parker.
We had to get
Mhm.
rid of one
He's
for-
friends with Casey. He's a real good guy. He'd be
Okay.
good.
Okay, there's a meeting when?
We're going to have a study session on December the 4th, Wednesday, December the 4th, at 4 o'clock. And those are, we don't do them in here. We do them in the study
We
session.
can do them in here.
You do them here?
Put a
Okay.
table out.
Yeah.
We don't even do that anymore. A lot of times we just sit up here.
Okay.
Now,
Okay.
nowadays, for some reason, I don't know.
All right. So we have a study session on December the 4th, Wednesday, December the 4th. Okay. Anything else? All right. So a foundation report,
No report.
director's report. We do not have one at this time.
Last time I think you did, yeah. Last month or
Oh, that
in
would've been
early
last
November.
month, that's
Well,
right.
it was this month. It was November 7th
Was
when we had our
anything that we
meeting.
haven't seen?
Yeah.
I don't-
And is there any way we can express how important it is that he kind of be here? And I'm not questioning if he's not physically fit to be here,
Mhm.
that's fine and dandy.
Yeah.
Know what I'm trying to say? It was, I don't have to have him here, I just need the notes. His report can be written as far as I'm concerned.
Ken,
So at least we have something to discuss.
once he returns back, could he send us notes? Is that required or does it need to be public?
He can send you notes as long as you each are talking to him and not all.
Oh, so yes.
You
So
just reply only.
to him.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So if he could just reply, if he could just send us,
Yes, I will
That-
actually at the end of this meening tell him the auditor would appreciate it, an updated report.
sounds like a plan.
That
All right.
That would be good.
All right.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, that's the whole purpose of our coming.
Mhm.
Just to keep going forward or backward or sideways or whichever way we need to go.
Comments? Do I have anybody who wishes to adjourn?
I'm keeping a low profile. I don't.
Okay.
Cinda made the motion. Anybody else?
I'll second.
Okay, great.
We didn't vote on
Let's
this,
be
right?
adjourned.
Did I get to do-
Yeah.
Share the motion.
There you go.
Don't want to hog the motions.
I love
You
it.
did good. Do you like that?
I like the gavel. Can I keep the gavel?
Can I make a request?
Yeah.
For our,
He's gonna
our
like
vice
that.
chair.